Welcome, everybody. This is Microsoft 365 Platform Community Call. It is December 21st, my name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm going to be the host this week. So this week, first of all, like we have said in the previous calls and also on the social media promos, we're not going to actually have demos today. So, but we also didn't want to cancel the call because we want to have consistency and we want to have a discussion if there's any questions and or any thoughts which people want to actually share among the other people in the community. So we didn't want to actually cancel these things because, again, consistency is super important for us as well. So we will have a similar setup next week, and everybody can bring their own choice of drink, coffee, tea, whatever, and we can have a discussion. Now, I do want to go a few slides through, and maybe we can do a few ad hoc demos, and then we can open it up for discussions and AMAs and questions and whatever comes to mind. First of all, we always want to repeat a few slides, and this is highly intentional, even though we always get the feedback, why are we showing always the same slides? But there's so many assets available for you to take advantage. I'm not going to mention all of this, but if you're looking into getting access on anything around Microsoft 365 platform, go to the AKMS M365 PMP. That's the last address on the slide, where you can find links to the YouTube, sample galleries, open source, all of the tooling, SDKs, documentation, everything is from one location, including Parker's Place, which we touched earlier today before we started recording. Parker is the mascot of PMP. If somebody don't know about it, and all of the profits from the Parker's Place, which is the store for swag, goes to code.org. So if you're looking into investing something, thank you, David, for that. Now, one thing what we actually talked about also in the past as well is that we have the Microsoft 365 Developer Program, which is something which we want every single person who's joining on these calls to take advantage. So this is a free way to get an E5 developer tenants. So actually, as recently as yesterday, I'm gonna go off the script today. So not a super official discussions, but as recently as today, I found that there was quite a few videos actually in YouTube which were saying how to get a free Microsoft 365 or Microsoft 365 Office and Tenant. Just subscribe to this program. That isn't really precisely the case. So it is free for sure, but you will actually need to do and use that tenant for developer usage, and then it will renew in 90 days. So otherwise, it will basically expire, and you will lose access on that tenant. Now, so if you're using this tenant for developer usage, there's this instrumentation in place which is detecting that you're actually doing development on that tenant. It's going to renew automatically. If that's not the case, then it's basically there's a fraud detection. It's going to cancel the tenant in 90 days, and then the phone numbers which you're using for registering, all of that is getting automatically stored and all of that. So there's a level of intelligence behind the scenes tracking how these tenants are being used. Now, a few other things which I always want to promote on this course is our free learning and learning materials. And so these are completely free, available from the AKMS M365 Dev Learn. So I think we're now on 11 modules there. More is coming up as well. And your feedback is, of course, more than welcome to understand what kind of things you would like to learn in the Learn platform. But these are free. And they're actually really good. So a lot of them give awesome starting point for understanding how the Microsoft Graph works, or how to do development for Microsoft Teams or for Viva Connections and so on. So really cool stuff to may potentially go through during the holiday season if you have some free time and looking into learning something new. Now, something which we are always also promoting in this course is our unified sample gallery. Technically, we have not announced this yet in official blog posts. We're going to do that in January. We've been adjusting this experience for quite a while, but let me show you what this is all about. So the sample gallery is basically our unified location for finding anything related on Microsoft 365 platform. Is it about bots frameworks or SharePoint framework or extending Power Platform or all of those things, you can actually find those samples from here. And right now, by default, we have 639 samples. More is coming up. I'm going to actually show you quickly what I've been working on the past 2 days, something really cool related on adaptive cards. But this is a really awesome location to quickly go through something like if you're looking into starting to build stuff for Viva Connections, as an example, you can just select the products and you'll find individual samples which are available for you to take advantage. And all of the samples are basically stored in a GitHub. They're MIT licensed, so they are for you to take advantage any way you want. From here, you can download it from a GitHub, or you can open a sample from GitHub, and then you get access on the source code. And that's really, really cool. And like I said, MIT licensed, just to clarify on that one as well. All of the repos are under MIT license, which the sample repos, and that means that you can use all of the source code as it is. So there's no commitments from our side related on that. So it's a good way of actually learning how to build stuff across the Microsoft 365. Good. I'm not going to spend too much time in there. Let's go back on slides. Also, quick reminder on our Sharing is Caring initiative. I think David is eager to use his radio voice to explain what this is all about.
Absolutely, you know me, absolutely. All right, well, friends, as you have seen, there are tons of resources available to you and everyone within the Microsoft 365 community. They're welcome for you to contribute back to as well. But we totally understand that there are times when there may be some hurdles involved in you doing that. The Sharing is Caring initiative is one that is going to provide hands-on guidance. It's going to assist you to not only use the resources available to you, but also contribute back if that's an area of interest. Things like contributing to GitHub, your first pull request, perhaps you want to present a demo on a presentation call coming up. We want to help you with that. We'd love to see your work. We'd love to see your contributions, and we want to help you get more involved. These are free, safe space opportunities. They're going to be done hands-on with the guidance from MVPs, Microsoft employees, and members of the PNP team. All free, no cost, absolutely scheduled over and over throughout the year. So please join. If you want to join twice, that's okay too. We know sometimes it takes a few times. So aka.ms/sharingiscaring. Come join us. There's going to be lots of new things coming up for 2022, including the Viva Connections ACEs and lots more AMAs, as we know they've been super, super popular. So again, we invite you to join any and all. You can register for some in 2022 right now, aka.ms/sharingiscaring. Vesa, back to you.
Thank you, David. There we go. There's somebody is even quoting that as a radio voice in the chat. So thank you, David, on that. Like I said, we are a bit off the script today because we have the holiday discussion. Something what I just realized, I said that I'm going to show what I've been building today, but then I didn't as related on the samples. So let me go back on the sample gallery. Something which I've been building, just a teaser let me try to clarify this in English. English is so hard. Finglish is much easier. So let's do that. And let me go GitHub and PNP. So what I've been doing today, and something that's just going to come as a update on the sample gallery as well, is a new adaptive card design. So this is something which we've been teasing and showing a few times already in a few different community calls. But one of the things which you might or might not know are related on adaptive cards. Some of the adaptive card samples which we have in the adaptive card designer, adaptive card sites, these are not as super cool looking and super polished as they might be, and we are adjusting them in the future. But before that happens, we are just about to get released a new adaptive card templates and design examples in the PNP organization. So let's take an example from here. If I go to the samples and the simple list, actually pretty cool. It's still missing the README file, so that's an area where I'm still working on. But if I put that sample adaptive card in here, we can actually see pretty cool looking adaptive cards as a starting point for designing experiences. So this is basically a new set of samples, a new set of assets, which will be available for you quite soon through the sample gallery as well. So what we're trying to do is get every single sample. Thank you, Sebastian. I saw you clapping. Every single sample and every single design available through the sample gallery. We're also working with Paul on getting the scripts released through here and all of that stuff. So in the future, it would be the one location where you will go, and then you'll find every single sample in PowerShell scripts or in Viva or Graph or Teams from one single location. So pretty cool stuff. Now, let me go back on slides. So we had a few news articles from last week, which I wanted to actually go through as well, because again, we typically go them through on Tuesdays, and last week we had 4 news on the developer platform. So first of all, Nick had a really cool blog article related on Microsoft Graph Data Connect, demystifying user scopes. So explaining what the user scopes are when you're taking a huge amount of data away from the Microsoft Graph or Microsoft 365. For Microsoft Graph Data Connect is basically a batch process of exporting data for your solution and then analyzing data, for example, an external solution in Azure or whatever. And Nick has a good article on that. Sakyolaf talks about the Teams.js SDK v2 public preview. And this is just to clarify on that one, we can talk about it in the Q&A and AMA a bit more as well. But this is in preview, and it's kind of a version 2 of the Teams manifest, including Teams JavaScript SDK improvements. So it's basically also enabling the Teams solution to be exposed inside of the Office, which is really, really cool as well. So additional scenarios which are available. And then Matt Hangi had an article related on stay in sync with Microsoft Loop. So Microsoft Loop is based on Fluid Framework, and this article talks about all of the samples and tooling and the guidance which are available for you to take advantage if you're looking into implementing similar experiences as with Microsoft Loop. Microsoft Loop is technically the application which we previewed, which is coming in the future, and then Fluid Framework is the technology behind of the scenes which is being used. And then the last article from Microsoft Graph team, connecting networks of information with Microsoft Graph Connector partners, and that's kind of promoting the well, not kind of, it is promoting the Microsoft Graph Connector partner gallery from where you can find the different Microsoft Graph connectors available for you to take advantage already today, which is really, really cool. Now, before we go to the Q&A and AMA section and talk about other things, we're not going to raise a community call without doing a proper together mode picture. And let's see if we can actually do this using the Christmas theme. So we are already recording. And let me set the scene. Unfortunately, if I remember correctly, there's only a limited set of seats on the Christmas. There's no Christmas. Where is it? There used to be a Christmas one. Now I'm disappointed. There's only 5 in the Christmas one. We shouldn't be using that. We're hitting the 50. So let's actually do that one. That's a good Christmas holiday season. And let me actually start the Camtasia for capturing that. 1 second. And let me actually start the recording. 1 second. And everybody remembers how Seb is doing this. So let's do some hand waving. Here we go. Seb on the back as an example. Really, really good. Awesome. Cool. We're going to get a GIF animation, that one for sure as well. Now, thank you for that one. I'm going to move the screen away from here. So, and before we go to the AMA and Q&A section to have a discussion with you on any questions and with audio, and let's just have a random discussion, I wanted to also thank you or say thank you for being part of the community within 2021. And all of us from behalf of the Microsoft and community teams are looking forward the next year as well. It's been a really interesting year yet again. There seems to be a theme within the past years, and there's a bit of a change on the way how we work and all of that. But I think the community is helping us to manage all of that thing. So thank you for being part of this. Really, really cool. Now, as said, when we started the call and in the promos as well, we do not have actual demos today. So this one was basically intended to be a open discussion, answering questions, jumping on assets, doing potentially ad hoc demos for anybody who's asking anything in the call, and if nothing else, saying hi for everybody in the call as well. We're going to do the same thing next week as well, because we don't want to actually allocate demo time, but we don't also want to cancel the calls because that's not smart in general. So Q&A, AMA. We have a lot of people in the call, and let's see if we can help on this. So Stefan is asking a question regarding OneDrive. More and more files are being saved on the user OneDrive, loop files, Office scripts, and are related on, all of the data which is related on users. Problem is when user moves to another department, permissions to SharePoint sites might change. And even worse, when the user leaves company, files on OneDrive are deleted. Is there a vision behind this to store files in a SharePoint instead of OneDrive? So if you think about the positioning of the OneDrive, by default, the thinking behind of the scenes is that a document which is being worked on, which is not yet company official, is actually stored in a OneDrive. And of course, all of the personal assets and personal files and personalization is stored in the OneDrive. As if the person moves away from the company, well, first of all, if a person moves across the departments or organization, that doesn't change because the identity is still the same. So it's exactly the same OneDrive. So regardless, am I located in Finland or Finnish organization or in US organization, it doesn't actually change my OneDrive icon account name, and that doesn't change anything on accessing those. But as a person is moving away from the company, there's actually a backup process for transferring that OneDrive to the owner of the manager. So that is by default happening, and that's happening for the sake of making sure that the files which the user created would be still available by the company where the user was actually available. And then the manager can actually decide what's going to happen as part of that transition. Different companies have different rules on that, and then it's up to the company to make a decision over there. But basic idea there is just simply that OneDrive is really the centralized location to store everything related on which is owned by the persona. And this comes back on, I guess, also from a privacy perspective. So the information is not stored in a SharePoint as such, it's stored in a OneDrive because it's behind of a one account and a one persona. So then it doesn't matter if I'm using my iPhone or iPad or whatever accessing the files, I can always access them because they're stored over there. And fair point from Benoit, managers don't always know what was created and what is in use. That's for sure. Quite often, managers don't know that, but at least they have 30 days time on reacting on that. Maybe they don't care. Again, depends on a company. It's not there's a lot of gray areas on that discussion depending on which region of the world we are. So not a simple silver bullet answer on that one.
Hey, Vesa, after the transfer to the manager, are links to those files preserved, or will they be broken?
It's still all of the links and all of the locations are still the same. So basically, the manager gets permissions to the files because they are owned by the company where the user was. So that means that the location and the links are still the same. The files are not moved under the manager. Gotcha. Basically, manager is then making the decision what's going to happen afterwards. Yeah, and thank you, Paul, for that one. I wasn't aware of that because I haven't really followed up on what's on the retention policies, but you can also set retention policies to keep OneDrive alive longer than 30 days. Yeah, thank you, Trakan, confirming that as well. Now, Margaret is a new to PnP library. It's also coming from server side, and templates are disabled. Templates are disabled in 360. How to use PnP libraries, template and copy sites. That's a really, how would I put it? A semi-hard question as well. So it really comes back on what do we mean technical details related on what are you looking into doing with the templates. Now, first of all, let me actually do this. If we're talking about the PnP provisioning templates, let me get in here and let me go in here. Templates, let's get in there. So on the provisioning templates, first of all, so all of the templates which are exposed in lookbook.microsoft.com, answering Margaret's question. So all of the templates which we have available in the lookbook.microsoft.com are actually available from not from here, from GitHub. There we go. So that's where they are available from here, and then it's a matter of actually taking advantage of the template. So you don't necessarily need to use the lookbook service. You can always come in here and, for example, go to a, let's say, communications template and access and see the template, and then you can actually find the PNP file in here. Then using this one, you can use it and apply to a tenant using the PNP PowerShell, and that would be a way of approaching that. The challenge of doing this, however, in a tenant level is that you will require a tenant administrative permissions, because the SharePoint provisioning is quite a heavy operation. In SharePoint, unfortunately, there are, let's say, a bit not super detailed scopes. So as an example, something like SB Web or web objects, the logo of the site, be able to update the logo of a site from a programmatically perspective, the application needs to have a tenant full read-write permissions. And that's because of the scopes in the SharePoint area are not quite optimal. Now we're looking into potentially changing that in the future, but that's going to help on certain areas. But from here, coming back on the question, from here you can get access on all of the templates, and then it's just a matter of using PNP PowerShell. And I guess we have that relatively well documented in the documentation on that. Now, on any other questions, dear Sander, would like graph call that tells you who the members of a shared mailbox are. Graph call for knowing who are the members in a shared mailbox. I'm going to put Sebastian on the queue on this one, and now he's like, hey, I wasn't listening. See,
you were right.
But a graph call to get the members of a shared mailbox. I'm just thinking that if we don't have this kind of an API in Exchange, I guess we can potentially absolutely get that one at some point. So
I know I don't have the specific answers that I might want to check. And thanks, Vesa, for going there. I know that there are some limitations under the shared mailbox. It's not fully supported in Graph. There are some work to come right now on the Outlook side of things, so everything that is mail. We're seeing a lot of efforts to bring all the capabilities that were available in EWS or in the Outlook REST API v1 or v2 to Microsoft Graph because of some of the deprecation that were announced. So we want to get to a basically to a parity with this. So right now, if I'm not mistaken, we don't have that rich support for Shell Mailbox, but that's something that will likely come in the future when we're getting closer to parity with this. And if I'm wrong, I'm mistaken. I'm sorry about this, but that's really my feeling because it's not the first time that we hear about something like this.
Yeah. In general, of course, we want to provide all of the needed APIs for the ecosystem, and this is basically just it's just inevitable that this is a journey. We have certain set of APIs currently, and then we keep on adding, and then it's a matter of making noise and requesting, not using user voice, but using the feedback portal, where the graph is moving. At some point, graph is still in the temporary location, right, Seb? Not in the feedback portal. Feedback user voice replacement.
So there's a AK, let me check quickly. So it's ak.ms/graph requests. I'm going to put that in the chat. I'm going to be faster than David, which I don't know if it's possible. I made it. I was faster than David. Where you're going to find all the graph related requests. So ak.ms/graph requests, which is a community on the tech community where we're doing all of the upvotes over there. So that would be a great place for this, if I'm looking at shared mailbox, well, exactly. There's already a request around Graph API to manage shared mailbox access. So basically, also get the membership of it that was already created, where we have already 13 upvotes on it.
Yep, which isn't a huge number, but it's already getting movement, which is good. So that is good.
Absolutely.
Seth,
That's
can you post a link? Can you post a link to that request so that people can vote?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I was faster than Seb.
Thank you.
Good. Related on this one, actually, just a reminder as well. So if we go to the Microsoft feedback portal, so already today we're in this kind of a bit of a change between the portals. So everything, all of the requests used to be in a user voice, which I know that some of you know this already, but I'm also apologizing on behalf of Microsoft. There's a bit of a mess in here. So everything used to be in user voice for voting things. Then we, some of the projects and some of the programs and organizations move in the tech community, a kind of a temporary solution in here to get those votes available. I can't remember what's the name of this, some sort of request and answer portal where people can actually vote on the additional things. And some of the products and services didn't go there, but they were basically waiting for the feedback portal .microsoft.com to be available. And now that is available, and that means that then gradually Office add-ins and I guess Graph, well, that was the discussion which we had last time with Jeremy as well, that the people are most likely moving to the feedback portal because that's the final location replacing user voice. It wasn't really a successful way for us communicating this transition, so we do apologize on that, but now we're on a final location, which is good. And all of the votes are still in here, so we're not losing any of the votes, which is good. Good. I'm watching on the questions. Anybody
There was a
else?
question about PowerShell too,
Yep.
Vesa. Alex, somebody had one.
You can actually say that, Todd, if you find it.
Oh, I can. I was letting you. You're the MC here. I wanted to come in with the answer. I was gonna let you pose the question.
I'm just attending here. Are you expecting me to work? What?
Okay, I will read it if you would like. If you
let me find it.
This is my question. This is Alex.
Oh, there you go.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I have a customer that really just needs to report vice versa from the site collection or from a user the access that was granted, and it could be just any access. So it could be minimized to just yes, I have access. It doesn't matter if I'm an owner, just access to an item or whatever, just any level of access. They just want to surface it. So the requirement in its core is the input would be me, let's say Alex, and give me a list of all the sites in the tenant where I have any level of access, whether I'm an owner or whatever. And vice versa, if I give a site collection, give me all the users that have been granted any level of access to that site collection. So trying to figure out what would be the best way to put something together. So either or both of those would be ideal. So, I could iterate through all the users in the directory and get all the sites, or iterate through all the sites and get all the users that have been given access, and figuring out what would be the best way to build that.
Really good question, Alex. Thank you. I'm going to actually put Paul Pollack on spot in here because Paul is clearly paying attention on this discussion. So what me? So Paul, the scripts gallery, if we go AKMS, what was it? Script gallery?
Script samples.
Script samples, yes. There's so many AKMS addresses. Half of them have created by me, but I can't remember them, but that's fine. So Alex, not necessarily explicitly something which is immediately available, but what you were basically saying is pretty close on some of the scenarios which are here as the scripts. And they're scripts even as either as a PowerShell script or as a CLI script, or using the Graph PowerShell or any other options as well. But basically, when we operate in a site collection level, and we operate with permissions, we would talk about PnP PowerShell as the solution for it. And the scripting is always the easiest way to do this. So basically, PnP PowerShell documentation.
And sorry to interrupt, but for the permissions to run that script, I would then go through the configuration of adding the the certificate, right? Like the app level permissions.
Yes, that's a bit of a challenge as well. So yeah, so to be able to scan all of the site collections, you would need to have at least read tenant all sites permissions, because again, you will have to have the right permissions to be able to operate in a tenant level, and that would require either there's two options with the PnP PowerShell, either granting the existing PnP PowerShell application to have access on the tenant, which might feel not good. But what can be also done with PnP PowerShell is that you can actually create an application for that particular tenant and grant the permissions for it. And that way, the administrator only grants for that script which is being executed inside of that tenant those needed permissions. I'm not seeing Erwin on a call. I guess he's already out. Anybody remembers? Todd, do you remember the initiate?
Yeah, well, I wanted to add a couple of things for Alex. So, so Alex, I know that it sounds like in your customer's head or in your whoever's asking for this, they're asking for one thing, but in reality, they're actually asking for 4 or 5. So you're probably not going to find a script that does this because of how things are stored. So just as you're trying to take a bite of this, trying to give you some stuff. Permissions are stored by the object in SharePoint, not by the user. So no matter what you think you're going to do, what you're really going to end up having to do is enumerate every file, every whatever, and then either spit out all of the users that file has access to that file, or just only show the one user you asked for. But regardless of how you do it in the background, you're going to be scanning each individual object. The other thing is the permissions are stored in a bunch of different places. So it's not like you can just say, give me the permission to this file. What you end up having to do is say what user has permission to this file, what does it inherit permissions from wherever, who has permissions to that? Is it a SharePoint group? Is it an Azure AD group? Is it an M365 group? Those are all stored in one spot, so you have to resolve all of those to find out if Alex has permission, because Alex might have permission because I gave it to you, or because you're in a SharePoint group or whatever. The other thing is, like the script they showed here, the external sharing is stored in a completely different place in the web. So then you also have to go to the web object and look for each individual object and see what links have been created for that. So while this seems like a really simple task, it's got a lot of parts that you're going to have to parse. In the chat, somebody mentioned the certificate part. That works really well. Creating a certificate, like Vesa said, where you can give create a specific certificate that has that permission, so you can run it and scan through everything. Otherwise, whatever identity that script ran as would have to be individually given permission to every site collection, which you don't want to do. So the certificate stuff's pretty simple, and I might have a blog post on that somewhere too.
Is it the register PnP Azure app, AD app? Is that what I'm running?
That does the PnP itself. So that gives the PnP itself specific access, but then you have to create another app. If you want to do that. So like Vesa said, you can either take that app and modify its permissions to give it all the stuff, or you can create a specific app registration and certificate for that script and have it log in that way so that it can't get to other stuff. But then because of resolving Azure AD groups and M365 groups, you need permissions in other places to get all of that. So my thought on this, if I had to write this, the other thing you could do is there's probably a third-party tool. I don't know if I want to promote any of them on this call, but there's a bunch of third-party tools that would do the thing that you're trying to do. That go do all that ugly scanning in the background and save it in a database somewhere, and then you can just query that database.
Okay, yeah.
I saw
sounds like a simple ask.
Nodding and shaking. If I said anything that wasn't correct, jump in and correct it. But that's
absolutely. Yeah, but sounds like a simple ask, but it's a bit more complicated, unfortunately. So
yeah, the simplicity in it is not I think the only simple thing I mentioned is they don't need to know if I have read access, pull control, or whatever. They just need to know, do I have access, yes or no, to the site. at any level. Like if I have access just to a library or just to a page or just to an item or just everything, it's just a blanket statement. You know, Alex has access to sites ABC at any capacity. So, you know, it's just kind of like a Boolean yes or no per user, which sites. So, you know, I get that from the conversation you just said. Thought is doesn't matter. There's no Boolean way to do this at a glance. I have to iterate through everything, and even through the external links.
Well,
to get to that yes or no question.
If you just need to know whether a user has any access to a site, there is a PNP commandlet called get PNP user that will tell you if, you know, will give you the users in the site. So you might be able to get what you need from that.
Does the user have to access the site before that returns the user? Like get PNP user, is that query that SharePoint users list or something that gets populated only after I've hit the site?
Yeah. So yeah, it will give you, I would guess, and I'm completely talking out my butt here. So check everything. I assume everything I say is 100% wrong, but I assume it will only give you users that have been given explicit access. So Alex has been added, or exactly like you said, somebody's been given access as part of a group and then gone in and touched something.
Yeah.
Because user info list. Yeah, that's so. I think that will not give you. And honestly, you probably you probably would. I don't know.
The other option is a search as well. So if you wanted to find out if a user has access to a specific site, if you know the URL, then you can. I think there's a command that for searching for a SharePoint site, and if it returns a result, then they have access because security search results are just security trimmed, aren't they?
But then you have to
So
run
if you
it
don't have
as
access, then you won't see it. Yeah.
But it is, in general, your ask is understandable. Unfortunately, there is no simple tools for that level of a reporting directly from product. And we need to remember that even PNP PowerShell is community and open source supported. It's not coming from Microsoft. So there is no native tooling directly from Microsoft which would solve the question, even though it's quite simple question, Alex. So.
Yeah, no, great. I figured it's not a simple implementation or where to start makes sense. And
Alex, my contact information's all over. If you have any pieces of this from the PowerShell standpoint you want to bounce off of somebody, hit me up on Twitter or email me, whatever. I'm all over.
Absolutely, we'll take you up on that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. And of course, using Graph APIs and all of that stuff, but that's what the PNP PowerShell and the Graph app is using, and Graph PowerShell SDK is using as well. It's hitting the Graph APIs and collecting the information behind the scenes. But again, scripting PowerShell is the easy way to automate scanning of objects without writing code. So even though I still remember back in when was it? 2000. Todd, we were in Amsterdam in 2012, right?
We were in Amsterdam in 2009.
Oh, that's true, actually. So, but in that conference, I still remember as we were introducing SharePoint 2010, that's true. We basically said PowerShell is just an evil scam for Microsoft to teach every administrator to be a developer. And I guess we were pretty successful on it. So, and I don't know if it was an evil, it was just a.
Yeah, I don't know if it was intentional evil, but it was evil. But I say that now that I love, and I remember, so when I first heard about the PowerShell thing, I'd done a bunch with STS-ADM, and I had avoided PowerShell because it was just too complicated. And I remember when they first told us for 2010, it's all moving to PowerShell. I remember thinking, do I go with fries? Do I go to work at a grocery store? Is it manual labor? Because I'll never be able to get PowerShell. And it's been a lot of fun. So yeah, it's a great tool.
So if you're looking for a web part version of the answer you're looking for, I pasted the link to a web part sample that might do some of the stuff you're looking for, or might you get you started in the right direction.
Yeah, this one is visually presenting the permission inside of that particular site, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'd have to change it to suit your needs, but it's kind of a cool web part, and it allows you to modify the permissions as well.
Very nice. Thanks.
No problem. I think we have Mike has a raised hand. His arm must be tired.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. Piggybacking off of the question that the previous person had, the way that he was asking it, it reminded me of the check permissions tool that was in SharePoint Classic, which I always felt was one of the best hidden gems out there, because it not only showed you if somebody had access, but it showed you how they had access. So if they were getting access via a group or something, it would tell you what group they were in that gave them that access, which I feel is it's a beautiful interface, but it's only available in Classic. It's still in modern sites, but it's buried 8 layers deep. And I was just curious, is there any way to, bringing it back to that, is there any way to make that modern or touch that programmatically to get those same results programmatically?
That's actually quite interesting, and we're jumping between the topics, and like promised, we're doing ad hoc demos here. Now I just need to remember, how do we get there? It was in the
yes, you go to site permissions.
Yeah. And then
advanced. I just did this because I had to remind myself.
And that was in here. Right, access check permissions. Yeah, this
check
one.
Permissions. And here you can enter any user or group. And it gives you very, very granular details.
Mm-hmm. Let's see if I put my administrator check now. This is actually quite interesting, because of course there's an API behind of this. Now, is that API exposed as a CSM or an externally hit API? I do not know. We would have to double check that one. Most likely it's not exposed, but that would actually give us a lot of details, actually.
Yeah, I mean, at least to me, this is proof of concept that it's possible.
Yeah, the data is there for sure. You're 100% correct on that. Yeah, exactly. Already years ago. So
right. And this is something that I demo to all of my clients, because almost nobody knows that this exists, and I find it a wonderful diagnostic tool for troubleshooting security. But again, it can't really be done programmatically, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. I doubt, coming back on Todd's question, I doubt that this is exposed using CSAM or exposed using CSAM or REST API, because this is most likely hitting the way stuff was implemented back in the times was basically hitting a server-side API. So
why don't
we can double check.
I'll paste in the link. Or in the chat, I'll paste a link to creating a sample request for a web part. So if someone in the community wants to volunteer or tackle the challenge of creating a web part that would help us do that, maybe we can put the power of the community together.
Let me get in here. It didn't do me that. No, I copied wrong stuff. So let me click that again. Here we go. There we go.
There you go.
I'm not going to fill in this right now, but somebody can fill in the request just to show how it looks like. So basically, and this is actually a good reminder as we are actually in the issue list as well. Just a reminder, because we get these questions and people even going to social media and saying there's so many issues in the list, and that means that blah 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 blah. A lot of the issues what we have on the issue list, first of all, are ideas and suggestions and improvements. For example, a sample requests like this one, and this one would be actually really good if somebody can fill in the sample request in here. So really good stuff. Thank you, Hugo, on that.
My pleasure.
Ooh, there's a good question from sorry, Hugo.
No, go ahead. I was just
no. Good question from Gautam Sep, right? Let's have this discussion. So Gautam knows exactly, and he's laughing on the video. I can see that. So when will all of the season stuff move to Graph? Lots of missing pieces like ALM, site designs, app catalog. So first of all, we are actively looking into exposing most of the tenant admin operations in the Microsoft Graph. I cannot provide an ETA, but it's being actively worked on. And our admin team is fundamentally committed on doing that. That concentrates on the, let's say, tenant operations and site collection management and all of that. So that doesn't not necessarily yet mean that the site designs, ALM, app catalog operations would be all coming to Graph. But we are certainly in this journey, and we are committed on getting there sooner or later. And don't quote me this in the wrong way. We're not going to deprecate CSAM. We're not going to drop support of CSAM and REST until the matching APIs are available in Graph. In the best case scenario, we would not have a CSAM and REST APIs. We would have Graph because everything would be in Graph. And then because that is the one gateway to getting access in Microsoft 365. So it's just that we need those investments internally and resources in place. But like I said, there is a commitment and there's actively work being done already for the tenant admin CSAM operations in Microsoft Graph, which is really good.
And we can see that there was some progress in the last year around new capabilities on the SharePoint specific endpoints in Graph. One being the taxonomy API, the content types API. Lots of work also that happened on the security aspects with some new permissions that landed the size that selected permission or scope that was shipped in May or early 2021. Now, I think the best thing as a community that you can do is to post these requests on the Graph request that we shared earlier. So aka.ms/Graph requests.
Yeah.
The SharePoint team wants to hear from the community on where are the gaps, and what would be the use case to use these APIs within Graph in a more holistic Microsoft 365 application rather than just like a SharePoint specific app. I really believe that this is the right way to do it. So I would highly encourage you to go in there and share your thoughts and scenarios on the Graph request. It is a commitment from both Graph and the SharePoint team to work together into ensuring that we have these APIs exposed. Now there's priorities, there's tons of different factors that can influence this, but hearing from the community is definitely one of the top ways that the Graph and the SharePoint team will work on implementing some of these scenarios. So feel free to share them. We'll be happy to help you along the way.
And that kind of defines then the priorities and the order in our side. So, and just to be clear, if it would be up to the Graph or SharePoint developer teams, all of the APIs would be already in Graph.
Exactly.
So, but it's matter of getting the right resources in place. So from a leadership perspective, that this is the classic discussion that, hey, so are we going to invest on Microsoft Loop with 50 developers, or are we going to address this API surface with 50 developers with additional API capabilities? So it's always a decision which up to leadership level people need to make on where the resources are being spent. It's hard. API surface is important. Also, UX level capabilities are important. So there's a lot of opinions and internal, let's say, discussions related on where to focus. So now there was a good question for Andrew Bilker. My pronunciation skills are awesome. Related on can multiple developers use the same developer sandbox for doing development? Answer is yes. There's 25 accounts in every single developer tenant, but there's the one thing to consider there, which is if you have multiple developers working in a tenant level, their code potentially can overlap. It really depends on what they're building. So it might be confusing for some person to, what if they're building or they're implementing a bit of a different pieces on the same solution, and then they're deploying the same, so different versions of the same solution in the same tenant. That might get complicated. Developer tenants are free for everybody to use. As long as you use it for development, you will get 25 accounts. So there's no harm having multiple of them. But again, it's possible to access the same tenant by multiple developers as well.
Each developer could have their own tenant, and then you could have one tenant for integration. I mean, that's
Exactly.
an option.
Exactly. Thank you, Rob. Really good perspective as well. So Stefan's question related on, does someone have experience on SharePoint webhooks to subscribe to multiple SharePoint lists with one flow? I can say no. Anybody on the call? Anybody?
Hold on, webhooks, and when you say flow, are you talking about Power Automate workflows?
Yeah, I'm not sure if are we
I would assume,
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you use a HTTP request trigger on Power Automate, one of the things you have to remember when you create a webhook, there's two things that need to happen, and I don't remember them by heart. But the first thing is when the first time the request is made, it's just to verify that the webhook is actually can be created to a right resource. And that webhook needs to respond 200, I think, status. And in any other situation, when the webhook actually contains a payload, you need to respond, and I don't know the HTTP status by heart, but you need to respond a status that says, I've taken care of this webhook. It's been handled. And so in your Power Automate workflow, you need to actually have that big if statement that will actually branch. So that single webhook or that single Power Automate HTTP trigger can handle both types of requests at once. And then you can also use a Power Automate flow to actually create the trigger in the first place. I think Denzel Fernandez has a good YouTube video where he does exactly that. I don't happen to know YouTube by heart or anything like that. I've just seen this video recently. So that's actually one way to do this.
I mean, the other way to handle it would be you just use the, when an item is created or when an item is created or modified.
Yeah.
That sets up the webhook for you and manages it for you. And then you use either call a child flow or use the HTTP trigger, HTTP request to then call the flow that actually does the work, just passing in, here's the list here's the specific list. Right now, if you do the HTTP one, that's premium, but that way you can have all of the logic centralized in one place and just have multiple triggers that call into that one central flow.
Yeah, absolutely. The advantage of Rob's approach, obviously, is that you can actually get away with maybe not using so many premium connectors. The disadvantage is you have to do it for every single list that you want to monitor. With the webhook, yes, it is a premium connector, but you could actually go and create a webhook for every list and point them all to the same Power Automate flow.
Oh.
So you've got 1,000+ sites, each with one webhook. That sounds fun.
If cost is a concern, you can try using the HTTP trigger actions through an Azure Logic app, and they are not premium in that case.
Yeah, it's a bit of a different approach, but it's based on the same technology, and then that gives you a different licensing model to follow, and that's the main difference between Power Automate and Logic apps for sure. So
I guess if we have time, the one other thing around the 1,000 sites, you'd have to look what used to be called API request limits, and now they're called Power Platform request limits, what might come into play if you have a whole bunch of different webhooks hooked up to one flow. That flow could likely exceed the request limits, so you'd have to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, pretty sure that will go over, right, at some, right, so that won't be a really dependable solution.
Yeah. The other thing to consider is if you're using the same approach, using Graph subscriptions also have a limit that you have to be careful about. Anything that you go above that personally sends an email to Sebastien, and he's gonna.
Yeah. And then I won't like you, but to be honest, on SharePoint specific content, the limit is extremely high. On Azure AD resources, it's a little bit lower, but on SharePoint content, you should not be hitting the limit. And if you hit the limit, then I will be happy to get your email and transfer that to the right people.
Sebastien, there was a cool question earlier in the chat about the future of MGT, and I know it's something that you're passionate about Do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely.
talk about?
I didn't see the question. I would have answered. There's a lot of, first, what is MGT for people that are not necessarily aware? MGT is our library of web components that deliver graph connected experiences. Think about how you might want to loop in a file list, or you might want to loop in a people card, a person card, a ton of different capabilities, login experience, and all of that. We build that using web components. You can use them in any type of languages. And from a future standpoint, we are right now fully integrating with Fluent. So it's complicated to say. So we're entirely going to the next gen UI language over there. We're also doing a lot of work into generic experiences, so you can plug it into any type of Microsoft Graph data and not just fully tailored experiences. And we'll be also covering integrations from Microsoft Graph Toolkit into other technologies. We're talking with folks in the Teams organization. We're looking at Power Platform opportunities. We're looking at SharePoint Framework opportunities. So we want to make sure that the Graph Toolkit becomes the de facto standard to create Microsoft 365 connected experiences. That's really the value that we're bringing to the table, and we should see a lot of movement in that space in the last 6 to 12 months.
Now, I want to tackle the final class question from Tim, which was related on creating a Viva Connection dashboard in the browser using Ace Card Designer. We can link and show static content, but you have to use SPFX solution to link/show dynamic content. And this comes back on, I'm going to be super fast in here. Let me go back in my site. Let me jump in the root, which is my home site. So we enabled the Viva Connection dashboard in here. And now if we, let me actually load. There we go. So there's my dashboard. And that comes really back on what are the options of creating this dashboard experiences. By default, there's quite a subset of a small number of the different cards available. One of the card options is the design card, where you can actually design the card look and feel in here, so you can basically provide a design thing, but this does not really work with the dynamic data, so it's only presentation, like Tim was noticing. We are looking into having more out-of-the-box cards. So right now the number of cards is quite limited, except in my case where I have a few demo cards and SPFX cards. But the mental mindset is that if you really want to have a dynamic card, then it's either a partner provided or SPFX implemented. There's a second party and first party cards which are rolling out gradually. So there's more and more cards available in the future. But for now, it is highly limited set of out-of-the-box cards, mainly the card designer, assign tasks, shifts, approvals, a few others as well. And of course, you can have cards which are dynamically linking to Teams applications, so the bots or the personal applications as well. Now, we are hitting the hour. This is actually quite fun. We could have actually gone longer and longer because this is actually quite nice to have just the opportunity of having a random discussion on things as well. But next Tuesday, this Thursday this week, there's 3 demos happening normally. So I think Hugo had a demo with Bob, and then there was Chris Kent is going to do list formatting, and then was it Marcus Miller? I guess was doing a thing on Thursday, and then next week, Tuesday on this time frame, we'll have a similar kind of a AMA Q&A session as today, and then we'll go back on the normal 3 demos in a session as scheduled after the holiday season. But thank you everybody for joining today. Just a quick recap on the different community calls. A lot of community calls available. We are looking into consolidating more and more here to the Tuesday call because these are getting to be more and more popular, which is really good. So rather than having a multiple calls. Let's have one call on Tuesday, one call on Thursday. So it's super clear. But this recording will be available also in 24 hours. If you want to come back on some of the things which were said or shown, follow us on Twitter. We won't be super active during the holiday season due to various reasons or understandable reasons, but we will get back on a normal status right after the holiday break. But thanks everybody for joining. Really cool discussion, and nice to have this discussion for sure. And thank you everybody for joining and helping on the questions. But have a great holiday and get some rest. Let's charge some batteries and be super energized on as the new year is coming. Thanks everybody. Cheers.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Thanks.
Happy holidays.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.
Bye all. See you next year.